Long before the rise of Islam, back when honor, courage, and sheer generosity defined the nobility of Arabian tribes, one man's name became, well, absolutely immortal. Picture it, the sweeping, harsh Arabian desert of the 6th century. We're talking galloping horses, evening campfires under star-filled skies, and weary travelers crossing an utterly unforgiving wilderness. In this explainer, we're going to explore the incredible life of a man whose legacy literally outlasted empires.
So let's jump right in. More generous than Hatim. This isn't just some dusty ancient saying. This exact phrase still echoes across the Arab world today, over 15 centuries later. It instantly anchors us in his massive cultural impact. Even now, if you want to describe the absolute maximum level of generosity a person could possibly possess, you say they're more generous than Hatim.
Part 1. The Chief of Tay.
To really get the myth, we first have to understand the man, his world, and this crucial concept of diafa. You see, in the brutal, arid environment of 6th century Arabia, hospitality wasn't just about being polite. It wasn't just good manners. It was a sacred, vital survival mechanism. If you didn't take in a traveler, the desert would absolutely claim them. Hatim al-Ta'i was the chieftain of the Tay tribe, ruling over the mountainous Shamar region that's right around modern-day Hale, and as a leader, it was his absolute, non-negotiable duty to embody diafa. He had to provide shelter and aid to anyone who crossed his path, completely regardless of the cost to himself.
Hatim's life is firmly rooted in the mid-6th century, right in the middle of the Jahiliyyah period. That's the era before the advent of Islam. He led his tribe and eventually passed away around 578 CE. But what's truly fascinating here is that while he never lived to see the Islamic era, his legacy and his family deeply bled into it, as we'll see with his son Aji around 630 CE.
Part 2. The Code of Generosity.
So how exactly did a tribal chief become a living proverb? Well, historical accounts document an incredible, almost unbelievable list of selfless acts. Hatim was the ultimate paragon of generosity. Get this, he would actually light massive fires in front of his home at night, specifically to act as a beacon. He wanted to guide lost, weary travelers to his door just so he could feed them. Once, when unexpected guests showed up and his servant broke the news that they had absolutely zero food left, Hatim ordered the slaughter of his own prized riding horse. Now, a Bedouin knight's horse was his most valuable asset, hands down, but he did it just to feed his guests. And during a brutal famine in the 550s, he sacrificed every single one of his animals, including his riding camels, so his starving people could survive, all while he went hungry himself. He even gave away his only set of armor to a destitute woman so she could sell it to survive. He consistently, without fail, prioritized the welfare of his community over his own wealth.
But Hatim wasn't just a chieftain, he was also a highly respected poet. In his surviving poem on avarice, his actual historical voice speaks directly to us across the centuries. He writes, "How frail are riches and their joys! Morn builds the heap which eve destroys. Yet can they leave one sure delight, the thought that we've employed them right." He's articulating this deeply philosophical stance that wealth is, well, incredibly fleeting. You can hoard riches today and they'll be gone tomorrow. The only true lasting value of wealth is the moral delight of having used it to actually help others.
The crucial takeaway here, captured so perfectly in this line of his poetry, is the massive cultural imperative of pre-Islamic Arabia. Eating alone, hoarding your resources, that was seen as a massive moral failure. By sharing food publicly, Hatim was securing his legacy and upholding the absolute highest honor of his tribe.
Part 3. A Legacy Beyond Islam.
Now, as we know, Hatim died in 578 CE, but a truly powerful historical moment happened when his family encountered the rapidly expanding Islamic Empire a few decades later. Hatim's daughter Safana was taken captive during the early Islamic conquests. When the Prophet Muhammad passed by her, she pleaded her case, and she was incredibly eloquent about it. She didn't just beg for mercy, she cited her father's virtues. She explained how her father released captives, protected the weak, fed the hungry, and never, ever declined to fulfill anyone's need. Hearing this, the Prophet Muhammad immediately ordered her release. He stated that these were the exact qualities of true believers, explicitly praising Hatim's noble manners. It showed immense respect for his character, even though Hatim had been a pre-Islamic polytheist.
And the Prophet didn't just free Safana, he actually gave her fine clothes and provisions for her long journey home. Deeply moved by this genuine kindness, Safana returned to her brother, Adi ibn Hatim. Now, Adi was the new chief of the Tay tribe and had actually fled to Syria, but Safana wisely counseled him to travel back to Medina and meet this prophet for himself. Trusting his sister's wisdom, Adi made the journey. And that meeting? It profoundly changed him, leading him to embrace Islam.
And just look at how this builds. Adi inherited his father's immense legacy of leadership, but now he's seamlessly channeled that old pre-Islamic virtue of diafa, that fierce desert hospitality, into the Islamic concept of sadaqah, which is voluntary charity given for the pleasure of God. Adi became a devoted companion of the Prophet, lived to the incredibly ripe old age of 120, and became highly distinguished for his extreme love of prayer and his endless charity. He beautifully, perfectly bridged the gap between his father's ancient world and the new Islamic era.
Part 4. Folklore, Fantasy, and Media.
Okay, so we've looked at the grounded history. But a figure this legendary? They don't just stay neatly confined to history books. As the centuries passed, Hatim's fame spread far out of the Arabian Peninsula, making its way into Persia and India. This resulted in amazing literary works like the famous medieval romance, the Qissa-e-Hatim. In this tradition, Hatim completely transforms. He's no longer just a historical Bedouin chief. He becomes a full-on, fantastical, sword-wielding quest hero.
And the magic number in these epic folktales is always 7. To lift a terrible curse and help a prince win the hand of a fairy princess, our mythical Hatim has to solve 7 magical riddles. The stories are wild. He's journeying through enchanted deserts, fighting off cannibals and dragons, and retrieving magical pearls from giant red serpents. It's a complete 180-degree shift from historical reality straight into the realm of the Arabian Nights.
And this legend has incredible staying power, even today. In 2013, Hatim's story was adapted into a massive 68-episode Hindi-language fantasy television spectacle in India called The Adventures of Hatim. We're talking heavy visual effects, martial arts, and epic battles against an evil sorcerer named Zargam. It really just goes to show the absolutely enduring cross-cultural appeal of Hatim's archetype. No matter the era, he represents the ultimate hero, someone who uses his wisdom and bravery purely to help others.
Part 5. The Man versus the Myth.
This really perfectly summarizes our whole journey in this explainer today. On the one hand, we've got the documented historical Hatim, a very real 6th century chieftain of the Thai tribe, a respected pre-Islamic poet, and a Bedouin host who literally gave up his prized horses and camels just to feed the starving. But then, on the other hand, we have the legendary Hatim of later Persian and Indian folklore, a superhero of a man who fights jinns, slays dragons, and solves magical riddles.
But I want to ask you a really fundamental question here. Why do legends naturally grow around admired historical figures? Think about it for a second. When a real human being exhibits extreme, almost superhuman virtue, like being willing to literally starve so strangers can eat, it naturally invites supernatural embellishment over the centuries. History records the facts, right? But mythology records how people felt about those facts. To the people of his time, his generosity truly felt like magic.
And that brings us to an incredibly inspiring conclusion. Empires fall, kingdoms completely disappear into the sands of time, but true generosity, that outlives physical monuments. Hatim's real historical tomb is located in the village of Tuwaran, in the Hile region of modern Saudi Arabia. And remarkably, over 1,500 years later, it still draws visitors. People still travel up into the mountains to pay their respects to a man who simply refused to let anyone go hungry.
So, I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. If your legacy was defined solely by what you freely gave away, not by what you accumulated, but by what you sacrificed for others, how would history remember you? It's something to deeply reflect on. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.